If you got questions about being vegan or plant-based, we got your answers. Just follow along.
Listen to her. Yeah, that's actually an easy one for me because I was lucky enough to discover a couple things as soon as I went vegan because I was very nervous. I didn't know personally any vegans. So I was freaking out a little bit and I felt pretty scared and lonely, and it was felt like a steep learning curve. So within that first month, I found a website that people hear me talk about all the time, Clean Food Dirty Girl. Funny name. It's plant-based recipes and meal plans. And I signed up for those meal plans and just started learning how to do plant-based cooking, like making sauces out of cashews and how to cook tempeh and things like that. And then I also happened to find a master's program, which is where you and I met, Robin, at the Humane Education Master's Program through the Institute for Humane Education. And as soon as I read it and saw that the core concentrations were animal protection, environmental protection, and human rights, I knew that was the program for me, and I signed up. I applied for that fall. So a few months later, I entered the program, and suddenly I was surrounded by these sort of vegan subject matter experts, and I intentionally built my community that way because I knew I was going to need that support.
I love the way you said that you intentionally built your community that way. Cause I think, not to like kind of take away from your answer and jump into something else, but I feel like what you said is really important. This idea of having that community, because at the beginning of your journey, you didn't know anybody else who was vegan or, even considering being vegan. And I think most people, when they start down any new path, but especially something that's sometimes looked at in a negative way, like vegan or plant-based or anything like that, knowing there's, a group of people who are like-minded and can sort of show you their breadcrumbs, it can be really helpful and make you feel like, oh, I'm not alone. So that's really cool the way you said that.
Thank you. Yeah, and you reminded me, another resource I found right away was a YouTube channel called Bite Sized Vegan. And she does these short videos and she asks all those questions that I would have, I think, been afraid to ask live to a real person. I might have been afraid that they were dumb questions. And I think a lot of people feel that way when they're learning about veganism or they're new vegans. So I'm curious what would,
Yeah.
like, your
Yeah.
number one
Yeah.
thing that
So my sort of, and it kind of goes along with this question in terms of the number one thing that helped me make the transition to being plant-based or being vegan. I've been vegetarian for well over 2/3 of my life. And early on, the reason I went vegetarian was I made that connection between meat and the animal cruelty side of it. I didn't necessarily apply that same logic to seafood, eggs, dairy, things like that, but I very much was like, hamburger, no. So for me, I was vegetarian for a really long time, and it really was this kind of strange trifecta of, I got married, I was having a baby, my husband was going through a health issue, and I think we watched What the Health or Forks Over Knives, or one of those documentaries, and I was already sort of kind of thinking more and more about this, and I wasn't able to reconcile in my head the difference between the treatment of the dairy cow versus the treatment of a cow meant for beef. And it was really that kind of bridge that I said, any sort of consumption of an animal product results in torture and death to this animal, and terrible conditions for the environment, terrible conditions for the workers. And then what really kind of just completely, I was already, my bags were packed, I was ready to roll, but what really like got me in the car on this was my health. I had just had a baby, my husband was having a health issue, and I realized I have to be here as long as I can. And I know we don't have control over a lot of things. Even our own health sometimes can get taken from us. But I thought, if there's something I can do to control and to keep me here and healthy and, energetic for my kids and my husband, I have to do that. And all signs were pointing towards this plant-based vegan, this is your path. So yeah, it was kind of just this like weird, it was about a month from start to finish before we were like, okay, we're doing this. And I was really, really fortunate to, in speaking of like finding your community, that my husband was completely on board. This is a guy who his favorite food was chicken and he loved pulled pork, and we grew up on the East Coast, so he was all about seafood, but he very much trusted my judgment on this, thankfully, and we just dove right in. And so it's been over 6 years, a little over 6 years. And we've been keep going.
That's awesome. It almost sounds like your familial support and inspiration and love for them and their good health is that number one thing that gave you that push to make the transition.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's actually really interesting the way to put that. It was like a mirror. It was like my care for them was pushing me in this direction. And luckily their trust of me was like, we'll go along with this. And since then, I've been really, really lucky. I've gotten a lot of other family members to sort of come on over to the plant-based side, which of course is amazing. And that's awesome, to just have other people kind of be open and welcoming, because I know that's not always the experience that people have.
Like Robin turned me vegan testimonials.
It's like a pyramid scheme. Like once you're vegan, you have to like keep recruiting. It's like one of those like multi-level marketing things. Just trying to get the numbers on our side. This is what we need to be right here. Up.